You're listening to Partnernomics Podcast, where we discuss the art and science of developing successful strategic partnerships. To learn more about the suite of Partnernomics solutions, visit partnernomics.com.
Welcome back to another episode of Partnernomics Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Brigman. And on today's show, we have Danny Keating with us. And so Danny is a partnering professional with a really cool company that we're going to get a chance to learn a lot about, but data intensity. And Danny has a rich background in this tech world that we're going to have a chance to uncover over the next 30 minutes. Danny, how you doing, sir? Thanks for joining us.
Good, thank you, Mark. Nice to be here.
Danny, if you would, I'd love to just start off with podcast, just learning a little bit about our guest and their background and how they started their career and then how they landed in a partnering role. Would you mind sharing with us your story?
Yeah, of course. So, as mentioned, my name's Danny Keating. I'm the Global Alliances Director at Data Intensity. A bit of a strange entry into the IT world, I guess. Prior to my career in IT, I spent 7 years in the Royal Navy in the UK as a submariner. Once I'd left the Navy, I was kind of looking for a role that I could get into that was emerging from a technology standpoint, that was quite fast-paced and had that similar buzz as, from a team perspective that I felt in the military. So IT wasn't I guess the dream role, but when I got into the industry, it quickly became apparent that I enjoyed the background. I enjoyed the lifestyle and the fast-paced realm of the IT industry. So I've been with Data Intensity now for 9 years. Come through acquisition. So DI are a Oracle managed service provider, a global Oracle managed service provider in the US, UK, and Australia. And predominantly, we're focused on providing Oracle managed services to our customers from application to disk. More latterly, I guess, in the last sort of 8-9 years, we've been helping organizations move, migrate, and manage their workloads into public cloud. So anything from Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, our own Data Intensity Cloud, and then into environments like AWS and Azure.
So Danny, I know you've seen a lot of change just over these short 9 years or so that you've been with the organization. Yep. Talk to us a little bit about that change that you've seen and just new technologies, new opportunities, new players, new solutions that's being brought into this ecosystem space now. Talk us through this evolution that you've seen over the last decade.
Yeah, I think when I first started, there was a lot of hype and Oracle was the bedrock of most of the organizations we were working with. They were very business critical systems and still are to this day, but they predominantly drove a lot of decisions that organizations made, in terms of investment, in terms of manpower, and the way that organizations were consuming IT. I think what the biggest thing that we've seen change is obviously the adoption to cloud and the emergence of the likes of AWS and Azure and more latterly Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. That there's so much choice for organizations now, and as we see the role of some of the IT professionals change as well in terms of the individuals that we have historically worked with and those that we work with today. Coupled with that, I think really one of the things that I've noticed as a real change in the organizations that we work with is 9 years ago, businesses were being led from a financial perspective and decisions were being made by the IT world. IT directors, CIOs had big budgets. They could make very easy decisions on how they wanted to spend money, how they wanted to buy and consume IT. And I think that the biggest change that we've seen is the ownership of that go from IT into more business-led decisions. Sales teams now are deciding what platforms they want their sales teams to use. And we're seeing real disparity in organizations where customers are buying and consuming IT without necessarily IT having to support it. So we've had to really adopt and change as an organization. We've had to go from, we were talking earlier on, from an inwardly facing Oracle organization that had an Oracle partnership and nothing else, and that serviced us very well, to now really helping our customers on journeys, and that's really helping them understand the decisions they're making in terms of the cost perspective, and helping them really figure out the next stages of their IT journey. And from an Oracle standpoint, that's decisions whether or not they want to stay on Oracle, what they want to do next around software as a service, or whether they want to consume AWS or Azure, and what that means from our perspective as a professional services and managed services organization.
So it's really interesting, and I've heard that a lot, where it used to be the IT department. I mean, everything funneled through that, but now there's so many different solutions that are out there, and a lot of that ownership is being put on, the executives that are leading those teams, right? The marketing team, the sales team, just like you had mentioned. And then just internally, the way that your company is going to market and the way that you build relationships, it required some pivots, some adjustments internally to be able to collaborate and to work with customers based upon the way that they were purchasing.
Yeah, and I think as well as that, the financial constraints that organizations have to, more so now than ever in COVID, but, we've had global economic crises in the last 8 or 9 years. And, there's independent struggles that companies have as they try to adapt to the fast-paced world of the way that we consume goods and technology these days. And I think one of the biggest, Oracle's an expensive tool, right? It's the best technology out there from a database perspective. It has been for 40 odd years, but organizations now don't have the array of riches that they probably once did. The IT departments don't have the capability now to buy in additional options on an Oracle database that they may have once been able to consume. And therefore, a lot of the conversations that we have are around how do we reduce our spend? How do we reduce our footprint? And that's why the cloud's so prevalent for many organizations, because it gives them a chance to stop, look, and listen almost in terms of, right, what are our options? What are we doing now? And as an organization, we've had to really adapt to how we go to market and how we work with our customer base. And it fastly become apparent that as an organization, we couldn't just choose to work with Oracle. Customers needed more choice. They were on wider, bigger journeys on their IT roadmaps with the likes of Microsoft or AWS. And we had to really look at the way we went to market, which meant creating net new relationships with the likes of Microsoft, going to work with, again, we talked about it earlier on, but going to work with the big SIs and, finding ourselves coming in as subcontractors almost at times to go and facilitate Oracle migrations. And it's been different, but it's been challenging, and we're seeing major opportunities come out the back end. But as an organization, we had to really look at ourselves and look at what value we were bringing to the customers. I think for a number of IT organizations out there, the sense of purpose has been difficult to regain in terms of, we're just a managed service provider. How do we differentiate ourselves? And I think that's been something that we've had to really change over the last year and a half.
Danny, I'd like for you to, for folks that aren't real familiar with your organization, right, with data intensity, can you just step us through what are the solutions? What are the core solutions that, that make up the full offering that data solutions, that data intensity brings to their clients?
Yeah, so I come from an acquisition, data intensity, and a set of acquired acquisitions that DI made over the last sort of 5 years. I come from a company called Red Stack Tech. We were in the UK, and essentially DI were created by a couple of guys in Oracle who saw a gap in the market for Oracle customers that were looking to get away and move from Oracle on-demand managed services, which was the early, Oracle Cloud in a way. It was an on-demand managed cloud service that organizations could put their Oracle applications in. And I guess that we were formed really with the idea that we could give a customer a better option, a better service level. So really focused on the Oracle applications and providing managed solutions to those organizations, and focused on providing upgrades, technology, and so forth to those solutions. As mentioned, I come from Red Stack Tech. We were more focused on the Oracle technology stack. So if you're familiar with the likes of Oracle Exadata and some of the engineered systems platforms and through to the database. So the acquisition made absolute sense, because now, DI have got this capability of being able to manage Oracle applications from apps to disk. So it really is that full end-to-end managed service, focused in really predominantly on the mid to enterprise level organization. We built our own cloud around 9 years ago, in relation to a lot of companies coming to us. You manage Oracle environments so well for us, can we host them with you? So we created our own cloud in the US and completed over 300 migrations to that platform over those 9 years. And as we look to start seeing, what's the next stage, we're coming to realization that that private cloud world is something that's changing. We're up against the likes of the rack spaces of the world and so forth. And then you've got the big cloud providers like Oracle and AWS, Azure, Google, and we're now looking at the sort of that next stage of evolution. But essentially, we're here to provide customers with end-to-end Oracle solutions, from a managed service perspective, functional application capabilities, professional service, ad hoc consultancy, and more latterly in the last 2 years, we're focused on providing customers a sort of total cost of ownership, transformational capability to help them understand and plan the next stages of their Oracle lifecycle.
So Danny, a lot of, I think the more recent partnering work that you've done has been providing support for product team.
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit of what it's like or how it's different, specifically representing or working with product teams on, kind of a day-to-day basis, as opposed to some other types and flavors of partnerships there are. What's unique about the product side of working with them, and what are some insights or some recommendations that you'd make for other professionals?
Yeah, I think I found it really refreshing. I come from a sales background, so the 9 or so years that I've been at DI, it's been sales focused. Everything that I've done. So, I took on the role back in January 2020 to come in and build a Microsoft relationship. That was my mantra. We had an offering in our heads that we thought that we could build out inside of Microsoft, which was what we term Safe Switch, which was a methodology really of helping customers move and migrate Oracle workloads to Azure. However, that had to be placed inside of Microsoft. So one of the things that became quickly apparent within sort of an hour or two really of talking to Microsoft was we had to make what we had, the idea in our heads fit to the Microsoft world. And that really meant that we took it internally, we pulled the covers up and looked at it from a product perspective. So a lot of my time, and still is spent with the product team. I report into the CTO. A thing that we felt was important, we didn't want to be driven by the sales team in terms of the way that they wanted to go to market. We had to be on point from a product perspective in the way that Microsoft wanted us to be. And that was important for us to really concentrate on getting the first 6 months right. So we incubated with technical staff. I acted as a sort of a sales reference. We had the sales leaders in the organization as well feeding into that. Our CEO is a salesman by trade as well. So it was very easy for us to incubate the program without having too much of a wider sales view on it. And it's been really interesting at times that, as you look at the different ways the product teams work, and it's methodical. It's, from a sales point of view, sometimes I just want it out and we can do it and we'll do it on the fly, rather than actually let's take time and let's land the proposition. And I think at times Microsoft were pushing us hard. They were asking us for solutions. They were asking us for capability. And, we had to take our time in the way that we presented it. So it's been really interesting and something that I've really relished working with the product team. And I think it's important if you're on that journey as an organization to start looking at, right, what's next for us, that there's that relationship between the alliances team. I think it was very important for us. And the majority of the work that we've done with Microsoft, we're only now a year later, we've got multiple opportunities on the table, and working really well. We're gold partner status. We've got all of the accreditations that we need. But for 9 months, we were only talking to technical people inside of Microsoft, laying the foundations of who we are, why we did things, taking through people our methodologies, and really getting to a granular level of why we do things the way we did. And I think that's enabled us now to gather that sort of respect from the Microsoft teams. And now we're being taken into sellers by the technical individuals in those organizations. So I think it's imperative that the product team are tightly coupled to the way that we go to an alliances led strategy.
So Danny, it sounds like from your company's evolution, really started off being heavily on the Oracle side, and then now just because of market changes, just because of the way that the world is in 21st century, with this new economy, you guys have relationships now, great relationships with Microsoft, and moving into to AWS and going beyond there. What is it like, or what are some recommendations that you would have for companies in your position? What are some of those success practices to manage and lead great relationships with those large organizations?
I think it's a real balancing act as we look at it, because one, we've got to protect that relationship that we've got with Oracle. We are an Oracle provider. We've been an Oracle provider for 20 years, and actually the services that we provide are Oracle solutions. So it's important for us to have that sustainable relationship. So we had to protect in one way, but build and grow with Microsoft. And, I'm doing the same with AWS at the moment. And from our perspective, I think the things that we've learned, the real key takeaways is find your place, really understand the niche and what you want to bring to the market. I think, we had we had what we thought was a great solution, and we took it to Microsoft, and it quickly became apparent that we were off point on the marketing side of things. Our language was pretty, legacy Oracle, and so some of the marketing side of things that we were putting out were, not on point. We had technology. We had to kind of gather a leverage, sort of a leverage with some of the technical individuals as well. So, we looked at how we placed our product offering from a technical standpoint and how we delivered that message. So I think it was really from our perspective, a really quick learning curve, but we had to really, I think it's important to listen. I think if we'd have come into the Oracle world, into the Microsoft world, acting as if we knew it all and we didn't need any help, I think we wouldn't have done as well as we did. And we really almost bared our soul in a way. We kind of ripped our methodology apart. We've adapted it to things like the cloud adoption framework, which is very important to Microsoft in the way that you work, and you have to co-align with a lot of the ways that their practices have, agreeing to things like the to some of the partner certifications that they have. So really, from our side, it's being willing to adopt and change as an organization, to accept that there is a new way of working, but at the same time keeping an eye on established relationships that have been so important to you over the last 15 to 20 years. So it's at times a real plate spinning act, because you've got to keep that warm relationship with the existing provider, but there's a whole new exciting world out here that can really expand and grow, and probably does seem, it's like a new car, right? You want to drive it all the time rather than the car that you've had for 10 years. And I think that's what we saw, that you can quite easily get taken away and excited by the relationship, and people say the right things, you can get happy ears. And I think it's important to just find where you want to land, and then get the work right before you start really reaching out and trying to land customers. Make sure that you've got all the accreditations, make sure you've got the certifications for each program that you want to be in that's important to yourselves.
Yeah. Well, it seems that in years past, there was, one or two kind of primary ways to get to revenue, to get to new clients, to service them. But in this new world, more this ecosystem approach, there's a lot of different front doors to new opportunities. I'd like to have you just share a little bit. I know that you guys do work with different SIs, right? Those solutions integrators and stuff. How is working with the various SIs, how are those similar or different than, say, working directly with a Microsoft?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because I think I have this sort of discussion with the CRO and the revenue guys in the UK and the US, and I believe that we could actually do our number in the next couple of years, our quota attainments and targets, just through the partner ecosystem. I'm a strong believer in that, and I think we can get to a point where we can operate as an organization without doing any outwardly facing marketing. Outside of that, obviously we will, but that's going to create a whole new service revenue and capability. But I believe that there's enough there in the niche product, the niche capabilities we have. We're a global provider, but in some cases, you mentioned from an SI perspective, we're niche. We have a very finite capability, which is to manage, move, migrate Oracle workloads and assess them. So to an SI that can do full data center exits, but don't really understand the Oracle piece. And in Oracle, we often see Oracle being the anchor to a lot of the migrations, and a lot of SIs and similar type organizations are coming to us and asking us for that capability and experience around the ability to leverage some of our tool sets into theirs. How do they have a cloud methodology that they always follow. How do they take SafeSwitch and add that into their methodology to then enable the customer a quicker route to change? And then, so I think, where we're working with the SIs is really around about sort of providing unique boutique services that then we can attach managed service capability on and pick up service revenue on the back end. But it feeds the case study machine. We're working on some of these larger integrations, and I think outside of that, we've also got then the next tier down, the organizations that we're working with, where we're almost acting as the SI, where we're tying in organizations that are looking to provide and add more value to their Oracle estate, their existing environments. And, we're looking at where we can work with partners around mobile apps, or where we can do automated invoicing. So customers that have got on-premise business suite finance estates that they want to put into the cloud, how do we next gen that? They've done a lot of customizations in terms of their investment, and to walk away from that Oracle platform, to go to some kind of SaaS model that it isn't customized. They've got to go through all that education, $2 to $3 million investment in terms of changing. What we're looking to do is work with that ecosystem of partners to bring in and manage and help customers sort of future-proof their IT estates. And what that's doing for us is revenue protection. It's growing our capability to go and talk to them about fringe services and net new, rather than waiting for the likes of the big Cognizants of the world or some of the big SIs to come in with that proposition anyway. So I think, what we need to do as niche players and organizations like ourselves, where we're focused on particular services, is really look at how to protect your revenue. And I don't see how you can do that really without expanding your ecosystem of organizations that you work with, so that if you haven't got the capability, give the capability and become that trusted advisor that organizations want. And I think there's the role of an organization like us that's looking after the major business critical system within their environment to really act as that kind of thought leader.
Hey, Danny, they say that, change, it's either a threat or it's an opportunity?
Yeah.
Right. And the answer is both. And it's kind of in the eyes of the beholder. And so it goes without being said that there's a lot of change, that's going on now in business in general, with technology, with this globalization of the economy. It's just, business, the pace of business is moving faster now than ever before. As we wrap up here, I'd like to just ask you two different questions. One is, pull out your crystal ball. Tell us as best you can what the next 10 years is going to look like. And then kind of layer on that, what are some things that your organization or organizations like yours, kind of piggybacking on what you just shared with us, what are some things that organizations like yours, what will they need to do? How will they need to adapt to be successful over the next decade?
Yeah, I mean, the crystal ball was a really interesting one. In the next 10 years, I'd like to probably be retired with my wife somewhere. But in all seriousness, I think, from organizations like ourselves, it's really, there's a realization that I think the migration to cloud piece is only, it's only going to be for so long. Organizations are looking to land and move, migrate. And, at some point, the last data center is going to switch off, or the last workload will be moved, and the large scale migrations that we're looking to land as companies are going to go away. So we're already looking at the next sort of the next stages. How do we manage cloud sprawl? And when we say cloud sprawl, it's really around sort of the Salesforce, the various different SaaS based applications you've got as an organization. How are you pulling them in and developing management security strategies around patching and so forth? So I think the next 10 years for us is lots of change. I think, we're going to become more and more diverse as an organization. I think you'll see that Oracle, while still being a very core component of what we do as an organization, will become less and less imperative as we grow our catalog. And I think, I'm excited by it. I think that the ecosystem of partners that we work in will get bigger. I think, particularly as the number of niche providers out there are growing. And I think, for us, it would be very easy to go on the acquisition trail and start acting like we can do SAP and various other Workday and all of those other technologies. But I think we start to lose our, the story in terms of just being another SI. And I think it's important for us and other organizations, if I could share any sort of knowledge, would be to stay true to the story, but find ways that you can develop and change as organizations. And I see that through, the partnering, become the expert. Don't try and be the expert of everything, but, become the expert through partnerships and through collaboration. And I think that for me is really where I'd like to see us as an organization. But definitely in 10 years, I'd probably like to be on a beach somewhere.
Awesome. Well, Danny, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for sharing your insights. Man, it's going to be awesome watching you guys over there at Data Intensity, watch you keep growing.
Thank you. Cheers, Mark.
Partnernomics Podcast is brought to you by Partnernomics. Learn how to leverage the power of partnership. To listen to more episodes of Partnernomics Podcast, visit partnernomics.com.